Sometimes we need an enemy piece to move somewhere else, but asking nicely isn't gonna help.
Thanks, Chloe. And yes, in this lesson we're going to be learning about deflection. So what exactly is deflection? Let me explain it by seeing three positions first. Take a look at this position where all white needs to do is bring his rook all the way down and deliver checkmate. Unfortunately, the black pawn cannot take the rook or advance because that pawn is going the other way. Let's see our next position. Okay, unlike before, there's a knight on e7 blocking the white rook. So that means the white rook cannot move to e8, and white doesn't really have other pieces. So this is a pretty desperate position for white. He's completely lost. But watch what happens in the next diagram. Now this time we do have a rook on c1 as well as the one on e1. Now if we were to ask our opponent, would you mind moving that knight out of e7 so that I can bring my rook down to e8 and checkmate your king? What do you think your opponent would say? I mean, it doesn't matter if we asked him politely. He's not going to pay attention, is he? He's not going to listen to you. So that means sometimes in order to achieve what we want, we need to resort to, yes, I'm going to say it, violence. But be careful, I'm not talking about physical violence, I'm talking about the violence of chess moves. We need to force that knight from e7 to move out of the way, and we can actually achieve that by moving our rook to c8. This is a check, and the only way to stop it is by taking the rook with the knight on e7. But when the knight takes, the rook on e1 has a clear line to go to e8 and deliver checkmate, because the knight from e7 has been deflected to c8. And that's basically what deflection is. We force a piece to move somewhere else so that we can achieve something else. Let's see some more examples of this. Now, in this position with white to move, all we'd have to do is move our knight to f7, and that king is in a checkmate position. Can't go there because the pawn's attacking that square, and he cannot take the pawn because it's protected by the pawn on g6. Pretty obvious. However, in this position, there's a rook on f8, and if we actually go knight f7, he can take that knight, and when the pawn takes back, he can advance this pawn and watch those pawns. One of those pawns is going to get a queen. This check is now harmless because he can take this pawn and one of those two pawns will promote. Also in this position, after rook takes f7, this check is not good enough because he can block it with his rook. So we need to do something else. Now, wouldn't it be nice if this rook on f7 was somewhere else? Of course it'd be nice, but he's not going to move his rook on his own will, is he? So we actually have to force that rook to move out of the way. And we can achieve this by moving our rook to e8. Now, if the rook takes, then that rook has been deflected and it's no longer protecting the f7 square, which means we can bring our knight to f7 and we have checkmate again. Now, maybe you're thinking, good point, but he doesn't have to move his rook. He can actually get a queen. Well, he can, but in this position we can actually go knight f7, and this is also checkmate, because the rook on f8 cannot take the knight on f7, because if he did, the white rook would be attacking the black king, so that would be illegal. The rook on f8 is actually pinned. Alright, another basic position. In this position, with white to move, he can move his bishop to g6 and attack the king. A pretty basic checkmate. The king has nowhere to go, we can't take the bishop, and there's no way to block the check. Pretty simple position. Now, in this other position, the rook on h6 is protecting the g6 square. So if we actually bring the bishop there, he's going to take it. Now, again, my question, wouldn't it be nice if that rook were somewhere else? If it was, I don't know, any other square not protecting g6? Yes, it would. So we need to deflect that rook. And we can achieve this by sacrificing our queen, like this. Now that's a check, and he has to take our queen, but now the rook has been deflected and it's no longer protecting the g6 square, so that means we can bring our bishop there and we have checkmate. Now in this other position, white can move his rook all the way down and deliver checkmate, pretty obvious. However, this time there's a rook in between, okay, and that rook is blocking our rook. So we need to deflect that rook, and we can actually achieve this by sacrificing the other rook that we have on h6. So we can take here, and when the black rook takes it, now the line is clear because the rook has been deflected, and we can actually move our rook down, and then the king is in checkmate. The knight on f6 is protecting it. Very cool idea. And in this final position, we'd like to attack the black king, and we've got this bishop here covering those two squares, so that means the king cannot come to those squares. But how do we deliver checkmate? The thing is, if we go here with the knight, this knight on f5 is protecting that square. And if we try this other knight check, this knight on f5 is also protecting that square. Unfortunately, that knight on f5 is doing too many things at a time, and we can actually exploit this by doing this check. Because now when the knight takes on e7, there's no longer a knight here covering the d6 square. The knight has been deflected, and then we can go knight d6, checkmate. In fact, in this position, we could do it the other way around. We could go knight d6 check. The only move here is knight takes knight, or else the king is in checkmate. And now the knight has been deflected and it's no longer covering the e7 square, so we can use our knight from d5 to come to e7 and deliver checkmate. Okay. A simple deflection. This just about concludes our lesson on the topic of deflection.